Welcome back, everyone, to the Balancing Act podcast. I'm Andy Temte. On the Balancing Act, we talk to business leaders and industry experts to explore the balancing acts we play in our professional lives and learn about the events that put rocket boosters behind their career success. Today, we have Rob Van Craenenbroeck joining us. Rob is the co-founder of Culture at Work, which is a boutique partner firm that optimizes organizational performance by developing a culture that drives engagement and business outcomes. Today, the topic is organizational culture transformation. Welcome back to the show, Rob. And in the spirit of full disclosure, Rob and I used to work together at Kaplan, and Rob was on the show very early in its formation, probably when the episode numbers were still in the double digits. So welcome back to the show, Rob.
Well, it is great to be back at the show, and much congratulations to you on the success of the podcast. I can tell you numerous people I speak with that feel they get a great deal of benefit out of it. And as I was sharing with you some time back, the really great part of it is that each podcast has been something unique about it that you can really take away and actually do something and be better for it. So congratulations on it. It's much success to you continued.
Thanks, Rob. And we will add that value to our listeners today. Rob, you were a guest on the show earlier, as I said. What have you been up to since the last time we talked?
Yeah, so last time I kind of talked about the book Culture Factor that I just written. So I'm working on a second book now that'll be the premise of it. It'll be largely around organizational optimization. So with the book will attempt to have leaders and get business owners and leaders to look through their organization through a different lens. So if you were to take the roof off the business and you were a PE firm or you were an investment firm, would you be able to really look at the business objectively and say, what do we do really well? What do we got to get better at? Is that thing that we're doing driving value in our organization, or have we just always kind of done that? So that's a big part of what I'm working on right now is the book, and you know how long that takes, and you pivot a few times while you're developing the book. Right. But the other thing is, of course, continue to build out Culture at Work, the partnership firm that we have there, and we have been extraordinarily blessed to have the long-term clients that we do that have renewed work with us, asked us to do work that we probably originally didn't script for. So we're very, very fortunate for that. And the piece that I'm probably struggling, the third thing that I've been working on, and I'm really struggling with it, to be candid with you, is this whole semi-retirement thing. I haven't quite figured that out yet. So that was kind of the plan. The first few months went so well, Andy, and then after that, it kind of got a little wonky, and you get pulled into things, and you start doing some other things and things you didn't do before, and you don't realize how much the time commitment was. So I got to take a step back here the next month or two. Maybe that'll be my New Year's resolution, and take a step back and say, where am I spending my time and my energy? But I'm very fortunate to be having a lot of fun doing what I'm doing. I enjoy the work I do. We have amazing clients that are getting great results and are really appreciative, and we're appreciative of them.
Yeah, that I think we just got to jettison that word retirement from the vocabulary. It kind of gets in the way of the transformation that we go through, which is one of many transformations that we go through during our lives. But I bristle when somebody says, "Well, Andy, how's retirement going?" Damn it, I'm not retired.
The funny part of it is I always said, I'm going to be semi-retired, and everybody, especially family, said, that is not you. You will not ever be in retirement mode. So, so maybe better that a third party decides if I'm really retired or not. So, but anyway, that's been my big challenge.
Yeah. Well, Rob, let's dive into Culture at Work. What is the organization's IT factor, as I like to call it? What makes Culture at Work unique in the literal sea of culture advisory firms?
Yeah, well, we take a different approach at Culture at Work. We are not somebody who's saying we're going to get you into a 12-month contract and we're going to put forth this kind of effort. We are largely focused on just the results of the business. What was their vision? Where did they want to get to? And we are, you want to say contracted, to get them to those results. So we're not going to sit there and drop out in 6 months and say, well, we were supposed to be here. You didn't do these things. We weren't able to get this done. And so now we got to re-up another contract. We don't work that. We work towards the results and we stay, and that's why we call it more of a partnership than a consulting firm, because we're going to partner with you until you see those results. And in some organizations, it takes longer than others. So we don't get trapped up in whether the agreement has to be this long or that. We get focused, really intentionally focused on getting them to their business outcomes they want to be, but leaving behind when we go is the right operations and the right process that will allow them to maintain those outcomes for the long term. So we kind of look at business as a triangle. And one side of that triangle is strategy, and the other is operations. And then underneath it on the baseline, you have culture. And culture is the enabler for the other two, so that we can have strategy actually get traction and be visible and be a breathing document throughout the year, your strategy for your year, as opposed to something we all sat in a room, the boardroom, for a few hours, and everyone said, well, okay, well, now everybody go ahead and implement the strategy, right? Well, I don't know what HR's portion of that is. I don't know what marketing's portion is. And operations side, we try to put discipline and rigor to the operations side so that we can have really good governance over exactly what's going on in the business. And when you look at those three together, you really can't parcel one from the other. They're codependent on each other. It's not, well, you're a musician. It's not like the song Meatloaf, I think it was 2 out of 3 ain't bad. 2 out of 3 in this case is, yeah, you got to have all three. So that's how we kind of take that approach to the business. And we do, as I said earlier, we really try and look at it from almost like a PE perspective and say, stop thinking about the business as you traditionally looked at it, and looked at it with a very independent lens. And how would you grade yourself out there? And then let's start there, and let's start getting better. Every day is okay, but let's get towards optimization. Let's optimize your business model.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. That's our first Meatloaf quote in the entire arc of the show. So congratulations on that. And I really, I like the triangle metaphor that you're painting for us, because let's start with that big picture of culture. It's early 2026 when we're recording this session, and organizational culture is still such a hot button issue. Right. What is the primary culprit that drives that entropy? Is it just because folks don't see their business as strategy and operations supported by culture? Is that the answer?
I think in part, the answer is, what role does culture play? But I think there's a few other things. In fact, let's go back a few decades, if you will, because, and I'm going to date myself here a little, because in the 80s, it was all that we need to be better communicators. And then the 90s came along and, well, we got to be leaders, not managers. And then culture came along, and right behind it, it's creeping up on us right now today as we speak, is all strategy and aligning culture and strategy. That's coming up. But you also had a lot of long-term leaders that really they advanced in cultures that weren't necessarily healthy, right? So they advanced in spite of that culture. So their vision of that is a little bit skewed in some way, because I was able to navigate those waters anyway and be successful. Why can't you? So there is a percentage of the population that's that. There's also a really growing percentage of the population that I see that is trying to do it, but just can't do it successful, because it's simple conceptually, but it's not easy because it takes a lot of nurture. And what happens is we don't really clearly define, and we're not intentional about our culture. We don't really clearly define what it is and what it's supposed to look like. And we have to do that. We have to go through that process to do that. And then once we do, quite often the organizations that do a good job there, they fail at the next juncture. And the next juncture being, now it's time to communicate that. And what they do is they go to their town hall and they say, this is what our culture is. Now go be that.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of saying the C-suite needs to really adopt what I call KBH's key behavioral habits that are conducive to that culture, have people see that. Once they know they've adopted, then you cascade that to the next level, that VP director level. Once they've adopted it, it goes to the manager supervisor level and then on to the employee community, who eventually says, oh, that's the difference I see today. That's when you can really project the culture out throughout the organization. And then you have the opportunity to really systematize it by putting in, make sure you're talking about it in your meetings. Are you calling out when culture is really good and done things that are really conducive to the culture? And are you also calling out those people that, they're rowing the opposite way in the boat, right? They're the people who are the distractors in there. And are you addressing those? Because all too often we don't want to do that. And that is also really pivotal moment there, because if we don't do that, they can influence portions of the organization to row the opposite way, and you're going to have that conflict, and you won't be able to enjoy the benefits of a really healthy culture.
Yeah, I like you use the word intentional. So intentionality, I purposefully use the word entropy in my question. That's the second law of thermodynamics, that everything in the universe is designed to fall apart, and the purpose of life is to hold things together. So, entropy in cultures is normal. If you set the expectations for culture one day, and then you don't do anything for a couple of years, and then you come back and you scratch your head, well, why isn't the culture the way I said it should be? Well, that's just entropy at work. So intentionality is absolutely essential.
The organization you're in today is getting the results it's getting because you designed it that way. Be it intentionally, unintentionally. Right. You're getting the results that your organization is designed to produce. So if you want different results, you have to change something in the organization. For some, it might be strategy, operations, and culture. For some, it might be on the operational side. For others, it might be the strategic side. And that's what we try and do, is try and drill into that with the organization and say, where are those gaps that are preventing us from really optimizing our business? Yeah. And in many cases, we find the culture piece has to be addressed first before we can really have people embrace the strategy and then become very disciplined operationally about how we execute that strategy each day.
Yeah. So before we pressed record, we were talking about how work is changing. We just 100%. Got done with a high-level conversation about culture. Work is also changing. So from your vantage point, what are the big shifts that we're seeing in how work gets done? And I got to imagine that AI is going to be in your answer somewhere.
Well, AI is certainly the accelerator for the change, if nothing else. I think a lot of the changes that you're seeing would have taken place anyway. They just wouldn't have been thrust on us as quickly with AI. And AI is certainly not only advancing it quicker, but magnifying it as well. But there is a seismic shift happening in the way we work. And this is something that I've been speaking to HR people about, that you have to be aware of this. And this is your biggest challenge, but your biggest opportunity for that profession, really for leaders overall, have to be responsible. But we are entering what I would refer to as the skills economy. And we are going to move from the traditional organizational chart to going back to our strategy conversation, saying, what strategically are we trying to accomplish in our business? And then assembling teams or pods or clusters of employees to work on those specific things that are critical to the business, as opposed to saying, here's the goal. Now everybody, filter in from whatever department, HR, marketing, and grab a team together, and, each of you start to work on that when you can with your other things. We're going to extrapolate that talent from the organization and put it on a very specific agenda item, a strategic objective of ours to work on that. And the key is not just the individual that works there, but what skill set does that individual have that will help them be able to be successful with those activities that will lead us to the successful strategic goal implementation. This will help also as people work in these pods. There'll be greater respect, I think, and collaboration for one another because we're going to respect what each person brings to the table in terms of their skill sets, which I think is really huge for the organizations. And we'll be able to eliminate some of those silos. And it will not be just as it's been before sometimes in many, many organizations is, okay, we need somebody on the team, excuse me, from supply chain. Okay, Bob's available, Susie's available. Yeah, but does Bob or Susie have the skill set we need to work on this project? And that's what we should be looking at. So I think there will be a far greater focus on skills and aligning skills in a way where we can achieve our strategic objectives.
Thank you for that. So what does that shift mean for the HR and the talent development professionals that need to kind of make all that happen or at least facilitate it? You talked to me before about HVRs. Do you want to introduce HVRs here?
Yeah, we'll go one step before that, though, would be that talent acquisition's always been a big part of HR, particularly, in a time when it was really hard to hire people, right? And it was we were drained of talent in organizations. They really had a hard time bringing people on board and qualified people. Well, we really need to start taking more of a skills inventory of our people because we have to think about how we're deploying our talent, not just how we're acquiring it. Because if we acquire it, the right talent, but we don't deploy it successfully, we didn't get anywhere. All we did is add expense. So what we want to do is focus more on talent deployment and being cognizant of that deployment. What skill set does that person have to bring to the table? And are they working on the right things? That leads us to our HVRs, our high value responsibilities. So does everybody who's a key player in your organization know where the work that they should do that would add the most value to the organization, again, achieving those strategic objectives? As opposed to saying, we're going to try and drive revenue by 8% this year, or we're going to try and lower our operating expense by this much. And everyone's saying, okay, I'll do what I think is right about that in my department. Instead, when we're in our strategic planning, should be saying, okay, that's the goal. What are the activities underneath there that have to happen to make that goal come to life? And then who owns those activities? Those are the high value activities that are going to bring value to the organization and make us a better, more competitive organization, and make sure we have ownership of those high value responsibilities.
Excellent. Well, Rob, we're going to take a really, really short break, and we're going to come back and have a few mentorship moments for leaders.
Sounds good.
Want to understand money, markets, and the economy to make better financial decisions? I'm Andy Temte. Join me every Saturday morning for Money Lessons with Andrew Temte on YouTube or your favorite podcast streaming service. And we're back with Rob Van Craenenbroeck talking about organizational culture. So, Rob, we're going to do a couple of mentorship moments here. First, you have the Chief Human Resources Officer of a mid-sized business sitting right in front of you right now, and they're really getting tired of investing in off-site training for their team members because they're not seeing the post-training return they're expecting. And this is pervasive across the business, but they're seeing it in human resources too. What's your advice to this individual?
I think there's a couple questions you got to decide if you're going to send people to offsite meetings, and I certainly host them. So, but the question I would be asking myself is, when they leave there, will this address a skill deficiency that we have today in our organization? If I send Rob or Andy to this seminar for a day or 2 days, are they going to come out and now be able to put into our inventory a skill that we didn't have before in the organization? And will that skill set help us win? Will we be more competitive because of it? How will we be a better organization because of it? And what specifically assignments can they maybe take on that they couldn't have done before? How are we better as an organization when they come home from that? And if we can't answer that question, then we shouldn't be sending anybody to any kind of training at all. This country spends a lot of money. If you think about it, we spend $90 billion in the U.S. company spend on training every year. Every year. So go back to your question before of, are we moving the needle kind of on culture or on leadership and things like that? 90 billion spent. Have we got our ROI on that? I don't think we have in most cases. There are some out there doing a great job. We know that, right? An absolutely great job. But 90 billion is a big expenditure. You've got to ask yourself, am I getting that kind of value back? And besides, there's an organization that does a tremendous amount of good and does tremendous amount of training that most of us don't want to copycat it, but we should. And the military does a great job of training people. I know it doesn't sound like it marries up to organization, but it does. Yeah. They send in 19, 20-year-olds halfway around the world in dangerous situations, and they perform admirably. They do a great job because they create certain expectations around it. They demonstrate it. They make sure that people then have a what you might call a simulation around it. And then they go out and they really practice it, right? And they understand the expectations and the consequences if I don't execute well. If we put that kind of rigor around our corporate training, how good could we be? I'm not saying being militarily about things, but let's have that kind of definition.
Yeah. Yeah. And, so what I'm hearing in this answer is we got to focus on skill inventories and how the training maps to our skill needs, and how the skill needs map to our high value responsibilities, our HVRs. Is that how it all this mentorship moment? Is that how it all ties together?
It does, and it also you could take this a lot of different ways, and we'll stay on track here for your podcast here, but it also takes me to a place to say, are you even measuring the right things in your organization, right? Because yes, and we'll pick at HR a little bit here. It's my profession, but we have the traditional metrics of turnover and all the other things. Let's start looking at metrics from even a human resource perspective of saying, what are we inventorying our skills? Do we know we need to look at that as a metric? And what about things like driving revenue per employee? So when we start handing the skills and injecting the right skills in our business, we can get a whole new set of metrics that we should be guiding ourselves in determining if we're being successful or not.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to get to your new program, Culture Camp, which sounds like loads of fun.
Absolutely. We think it is anyway.
This is now your second mentorship moment. You've got an HR talent development professional sitting right in front of you right now, and they report to that skeptical CHRO that you were just talking to. Right. You've got this new program called Culture Camp, and why should this individual approach the skeptical CHRO with a request to attend Culture Camp? How is Culture Camp different than all the rest?
Yeah, fair question. Absolutely fair question. So first of all, I would say it's not just for HR professionals. We do have CEOs attending in many in operations, and I think it's best leverage when we come to training like this, that we have an operations, a human resource person, and we have different vantage points of that so they can have the same takeaway and say, how do we leverage this through the organization, not just through HR? So I think a more holistic approach in attendance is better. But where we're going with Culture Camp is that, first of all, if we look at it from an HR lens, that HR needs to be more proactive instead of reactive. Certainly there are HR professionals out there doing a wonderful job, doing great work for their organizations. But by and large, the profession has been, over the last couple of decades, far too reactive. They need to get out in front of it and say, how can I contribute to business outcomes? And they need to understand what that path is for them to do that. And at Culture Camp, we're going to help them, going back to our triangle before, get more business acumen around how can they help keep strategy alive throughout the year in the organization so it has real traction. What is their role in creating that discipline around operations, meeting cadence, things like that, our processes that we're getting at? Are we doing our visual management things that we need to be doing? And then culturally, creating that environment where everyone can contribute to the success of the business. So if I have 80 employees or I have 800 employees, they should all be contributors to the success of the business. They want to contribute. It gives them work purpose. And oh, by the way, then we have 80 or 800 problem solvers, not just a handful at the top of the organization. So this is what Culture Camp will help them do, and put this in a very logical sequence of saying this comes first, comes second, come third, so that you can execute it flawlessly in your business. And going back to the term we used before, drive those business outcomes. HR has a role in that. They need to get on board with that. Today is their opportunity to really look at those workforce trends that are changing and not be afraid of it. Jump in and say, this is our opportunity to really have a seat at the table, at the strategy table, and influence the organization in a very positive way.
Yeah, so I loved where you went with that, which is business acumen. The phrase should be on everybody's mind today. And what
Absolutely.
Business acumen means is that you're not just head down in HR land. You're looking to the side, to the left, and to the right, and in different directions, and asking, how can I add, back to your HVRs, how can I be adding value in not just the job that I've been told to do and the narrow lens that I look at it, but how can I bring in and really have a key partnership across the organization?
Well, go back to our Kaplan days. Sorry to interrupt, Andy, but go back to our Kaplan days. One of the things you told me early on when we met, when we worked together, so I remember a lot of those Andyisms. So, and you shared, I remember exactly where we were. We were sitting in the boardroom, and you had talked about that we need people to understand on the leadership team that, let's use me as an example as your HR director at the time, that you may not know as much about sales and can't contribute that, but you better care as much about sales as the VP of sales. And you were 100% right. And organizations need to get that kind of mentality and culture in their business. I may not be a marketing expert, but I have to care enough, and I have to support marketing, even if I reside in HR.
Well, Rob, what have we not discussed today, just in a minute, that's just on your mind right now that, gosh, I really want Andy's listeners to get this today? Yeah,
I would go back on something actually we touched on, but I would have loved to have more time to, you always want more time to go into great detail. But we have at Culture at Work our 10 organizational truths, and we don't have time to go through all 10 for you here today, unfortunately. But organizations need to start asking themselves, and it seems like a really simple thing, but my experience tells me from what CEOs are telling me after they're utilizing this that it wasn't as easy as they thought, is ask yourself some basic questions. How do we win? What should we stop doing that we're doing today? And you'll get all kinds of answers about that from your people. What do we need to do in 2026 to be a better organization? And in our organization, who helps us win? Who really helps us win? And do they know they help us win? And are we doing all we can to develop that talent so they can help us win ongoing in the future?
All right, Rob, thank you so much for that. Let's have a little fun. I got 2 lightning round questions for you. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. Rob Van Craenenbroeck just won a $100 million lotto jackpot, but there's a stipulation that he has to share half of his net winnings with one philanthropic organization or a general cause. Who do you pick?
Well, I'd like to think I would do more than 50% even, but we'll see about that. But this is really personal for me, actually, because what I'll give you is I would be very geared immediately towards child-related things like a St. Jude's or something like that. You may recall I was extraordinarily sick as a child. I didn't come home from the hospital until I was almost 3 years old. I had surgery at 6 days old. So for me, when I see children like that, I know how fortunate I was to be a survivor. So for me, I would be going towards something like St. Jude's and also Boys and Girls Club, because I know they played a big part of the life in my children who spent time there and really grew some nice values around that organization. And so those would be two causes I would look at right away.
Fantastic. Rob, we're all works in progress. We
sure.
talked about your struggles with semi-retirement right now, but
Exactly.
what are you focused on in your personal journey of growth?
Over the last few years, I've been really focused more on being more sensitized to mental health awareness. But I would say very recently, the last year or so, I see a very divisive world that we're in today. And it's bothersome to me to leave that kind of world behind for my kids. So I'm trying to do a better job of showing grace to people that disagree with me, and that maybe I can't fundamentally align my values with their values. Show grace to them because there's a reason they think and feel the way they do, and we have to find our commonalities, not all the things that separate us.
Right. Huge round of applause for that response. Thank you for that, Rob.
Absolutely.
It's been great reconnecting with you today. I wish you all the success in the world, especially with Culture Camp.
Thank you.
Again, sounds like loads of fun, and sounds like it's a great value adder. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thanks for all you do. I appreciate it. And the podcast is fantastic. So keep it going, Andy. Let's get to 4 or 5 digits, whatever it's got to be.
All right. Excellent.
Take care.
Thanks. Well, my name is Andy Temte. This is the Balancing Act Podcast. You can find us on all the major streaming services as well as out on YouTube. Please like, subscribe, rate, and most importantly, share this public good with your friends, your family, your colleagues, and maybe a neighbor. The show is produced by Nicholas Temte. We'll see you next time on The Balancing Act.